Welcome into a special edition of Texas Longhorns Live. Please hit that like button, please subscribe, and let's jump right into it. Texas grades versus Florida. So, obviously, we just watched Texas go on the road and lose to the Swamp 29-21. Let's jump into the grades. Let's start with the quarterback. I'll start out. I think Arch Manning gets a B- for me. I'm not going to go as high as A or A-, but I think I'd put him at B-. Even if you wanted to give him a B, fine, but somewhere in that range. I think there were a couple plays that he missed that he could have made, but overall, I mean, the guy was under fire the whole football game. We ended the game with 6 sacks. Could have been 10 plus, honestly. If Quinn Ewers back there, we're talking 10 plus sacks. We're probably talking no points offensively. Like there were plays made by Arch Manning that saved the day here, that was able to at least get us on the scoreboard. So I'm going to give Arch Manning a B- here.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a B. I thought he was arguably the best player on the entire Texas roster in this game. He was a one-dimensional offense where Arch was our leading rusher, of course, leading passer. He made a handful of nice throws. He got sacked 6 times. You said it, could have been sacked 4 or 5 more times. Everything was put up against Arch, and I thought Arch made enough plays. He pressed a little bit, made some mistakes. That's why he's down to a B, but I'm going to be a little bit optimistic with what I saw here from Arch. I do think Arch is he's developing quite nicely into a quarterback that can lead Texas down in the future to some wins.
Yeah, I guess I got to be B. Ross's representative on this one. I'm giving Arch a C. It's hard. He threw 2 interceptions, right? Like that to me is that he honestly probably should have thrown 3 if that one doesn't hit the ground. So like it's hard for me to go a B. I wanted to go be like, and this will be reflected in the rest of my grades for the team. Arch was the best player on the field for Texas. I said it on our live stream. It looked at a lot of times Arch was carrying 10 other guys, and that's why he threw those interceptions. But he threw 2 interceptions. He held onto the ball in a couple of spots where I think there were some open players that he missed, and I think they could have been open. Those would have been scoring plays or at least big chunk plays for Texas. So again, in the spirit of B. Ross, he's still with us. I think Arch, I can't go any higher than a C.
I think that's fair. Yeah, it's definitely. I can't wait to see your other rankings because they're not going to look very good. We might as well just go to this one. The offensive line gets an old F-. Just run out of room on your paper. That's how many minuses I want to give them. If I could give them a Z in the alphabet, that's what I give them, because they were horrendous today. They did nothing well. They did stuff pre-snap that caused penalties. They did stuff during the snap that either caused holding or your quarterback to get killed. They didn't move any lanes or move any men to create lanes for the running back. This is the worst offensive line performance in the last 4 to 5 years. I think it's actually probably the worst offensive line performance of the Sark era. I can't think of any other game where it's this bad off from the offensive line, especially when you take into account the competition. People will point at the Georgia games. You're going up against 2 first-round picks. Florida doesn't have 2 first-round picks on their defense line. They might have some second and third-round picks, but they don't have 2 first-round picks. So this is an F- for me.
Yeah, you nailed it. F-, infinity. This was a horrendous offensive line performance. And I do agree with you. I do think this is probably the worst offensive line performance we've seen from Texas, definitely in the last probably 3 years. I know the Georgia game was ugly, but I mean, Quinn Ewers kind of put himself in those situations a few times. Arch Manning, man, it's part of the reason why I gave him a B, because this offensive line was pathetic. Every play, it felt like there was pressure on Arch, yet Arch was still making plays and getting the ball out of his hands, which I thought was fairly impressive. There was a handful of times where he definitely should have been down for a sack, but he just somehow got the ball off. This offensive line was bad. The only silver lining that maybe takes 1 minus off is I thought Brandon Baker probably had his best game as a Longhorn, but I mean, it felt like Gooseby got, beaten a few times. The interior, forget about it. I mean, they were all abysmal, especially Stroh and Nick Brooks, who, poor guy, gets thrown out there as a freshman, has to go up against 4 pit bulls up the middle. It was just one of those days where this offensive line got exposed.
I think it was my freshman year at Texas where I was doing so poorly in a calculus class that I just stopped going. And that's what I want to give the Texas offensive line. They were terrible. Like, they were absolutely awful. There's no 2 ways around it. And I think there were some bright spots, but when 7 of your 9 offensive penalties are on the offensive line and 5 of those are pre-snap, they got bullied. They got pushed around. Texas rushed for 0.7 yards on first down. Their running backs, it was 15 yards. Like
11 carries.
1.6, I think was the number. I did the math, but my phone went to sleep, so I can't look at it. Like they were awful. They were abysmal. Like I'm a big fan of Kyle Flood. I think Kyle Flood has been one of the elite offensive line coaches in the country, but this year and this game specifically is, I think, a referendum on what he's doing currently, whether it's missed evaluations, whether it's not being as aggressive in the portal, whether it's just some NIL messes. I'm not sure what it is, but like, you should not look this outmatched in a game with the resources that he has at his disposal.
No, I completely agree. And now it kind of makes me want to go back and look at past bad performances from the offensive line, see where this ranks, because I really do think it's the worst since the beginning of Tom Herman's era. I think that's where I draw the line, because I can't think of any game under Steve Sarkisian that was worse.
2014 Arkansas is the last time I can think Texas looked this bad on the offensive line. Like when they went to, I guess when Arkansas came to Texas and they just could not do anything. I'm trying to think of what else.
Even when we went to Arkansas, they dominated us. Our offensive line didn't. That was more of quarterback. Like the quarterback didn't play well. I thought the offensive line was fine. So, yeah, really, really, really poor. Let's move on to running backs. I'm going to give incomplete. I don't know what to give them, because where were the holes? If anyone would like to watch the film back, go ahead. I'm not going to do it because I don't want to go through torture again. That is cruel and unusual punishment. I did not see any holes for these offensive line or for these running backs to run through. So I'm just going to give the running backs incomplete. If you want to give them a bad grade, that's fine, but I'm going to give them an incomplete.
Yeah, I want to give them incomplete, but I will give them a grade. I'll give them a C minus to it. Actually, I'll give them a D plus. They were stuck in mud. I mean, the second they got to the line of scrimmage, there was a guy right in their face. They couldn't do anything about it. I thought they made a nice couple plays here and there, and then got called back for a penalty. It's clear to me that Christian Clark is our RB3, not Jarrett Gibson. So that's something to note moving forward. It felt like Clark got a couple of runs there, and then again, that's where the penalties were. Yeah, it's incomplete to a D plus for me. This was, it's hard to put much of the blame on them because it got one dimensional because of how bad the offensive line was.
Yeah, this is the unit that I think I think you're right. It's so hard to grade. But I even think, when they got the ball, they didn't look like they were effective in anything. They were a non-factor in the pass game. They were a non-factor in the run game because of how poorly the offensive line played. So much of this is not on them. But again, they did not play winning football. Like it is an F at this point, right? They did not play winning football. They weren't a plus for Texas, especially with, Sark. It seems like Sark we'll say, this pride in that 1,000-yard rusher streak that's very clearly not going to hit. It's going to snap this year. So like they haven't been a plus unit. CJ Baxter being hurt doesn't help. Trey Wisner clearly wasn't 100%, but they weren't good.
No. Let's go to the wide receivers and tight end position combined. I'm going to give a B minus again here. I thought they were good when they had their opportunities. I liked what I saw from Ryan Wingo today. I like what I saw from DeAndre Moore. I like what I saw from Emmett Mosley. We finally got to see him. What honestly drives down the grade a little bit for me is injuries. Like, he's been a disappointment to me. I thought, if he had a little bit more speed there, is it a great pass from Ryan Wingo? No, he's also a wide receiver, but you somehow have to come down with that football because that's a really big play. If you score there, I think it completely changes the football game. We're probably talking about a tie game. We'll see what happens at that point, but I would give these guys a B minus.
Yeah, I'm going to give them a B. Kind of put them in the same bracket as Arch. They had a ton of plays available for them. There were so many chances for them to make big plays, and when the ball got to them, they caught most of them. The only drop not even really drop, but Ryan Wingo had that one crazy acrobatic play he maybe could have caught that would have bolstered it to a B plus, A minus, but I don't think there was a drop out there today. If there was, it wasn't a significant one. You got multiple bodies, the ball. And they didn't change the game, but they also didn't hurt you the game either. And of course, the Parker Livingstone play was great. The Ryan Wingo touchdown was awesome. But yeah, I thought they played fine. They were open. There was a lot of chunk plays. I do agree with you. Jack injuries, I wouldn't call him disappointing, but definitely has been very quiet so far, which is not a good thing.
Yeah, the tight ends are dragging down the grade, I think, for me here. I would give that group probably, if we had the wide receivers and tight ends separate, I might have the wide receivers graded higher. But Endries was not great. Jordan Washington, I don't know what he is or what he's doing. The only time I heard his name called was a penalty. So like that unit, if we separated the tight ends, I'd fail them and maybe give the wide receivers a C plus or a B minus. But when you put them together, it's like a C minus or a D at this point. Because again, the tight ends are a non-factor, and they're such a big part of what Sark wants to do offensively. So that unit being non-existent is a hampering to the offense. We've seen how good they can be when they have a good tight end, when they have a guy who can play. We saw it last year. We saw it even with Jatavian Sanders and all his deficiencies as a blocker. He was a huge part of the offense for Texas as a receiver. So like, it's just hard for like, it's infuriating because I thought this was going to be a strength. Jordan Washington came in bigger, bulkier, dedicated to blocking. We thought Andrews was going to be an All-American type guy. So they've been so disappointing in most of the spots this year. You're right about the wide receivers. Now, I think we finally have our answers that this Texas wide receiver unit is going to be good, right? We saw Wingo, Moore both played really, really well in this game. They looked explosive. They looked like the wide receivers we thought they were going to be. It was good to see Emmett Mosley coming. Even some of the young guys like McCutcheon coming in and showing some flash, I think was good. But if you combine the units, it's got to be a D for me because the tight ends are so bad.
I think that's fair. I mean, at this point, I've seen Nick Townsend block. He's probably the best blocking tight end on the team. I don't know why we don't just play him. Like, I think he has the high ceiling at this point. I think you should throw him out there. Jordan Washington, Spencer Shannon, complete disappointments. I don't think they're going to make any impact on this Texas program. I don't think they're around here very long. Let's go over to the defensive side of the ball. Let's go defensive line. I'm going to go, I'll be kind. I'll give him an F plus. You got pushed around for 2.5 quarters of football. You couldn't do basic things like set the edge. There were a couple sacks in there, but let's be honest. I think that had more to do with DJ Lagway holding onto the ball, trying to force the ball deep than anything. There was no pure get off sacks here where you're getting after the quarterback in 2.5 seconds. It was 4 or 5 seconds. So I'm going to give it an F plus.
Yeah, I think it's a tough one because I did think they played better in the second half, and they did make some stops later in the game. I'll give them a D, just a flat D. Again, Colin Simmons had a really great drive where he had multiple tackle for losses, but outside of that, pretty quiet for most of the day. I thought this was one of his best games, though, of the season. Ethan Burke was basically a non-factor. Trey Moore, non-factor. The whole interior was pretty rough out there. But when they needed to get some stops later in the game, they were able to mostly hold them and hold their own. The first half was pretty ugly, but I thought they played better in the second half. So I'll go with the D for the defensive line.
Yeah, I think it's hard for me to feel good about this unit because it was very clear going into the game that Pete Kwiatkowski's plan was for that offense or the defensive front to hold up and to kind of put the DJ Lagway in a position to have to be a quarterback. And Florida just was able to get what they needed on the ground. They averaged, I think, almost 5 or 6 yards per carry on first down. Like they were just a better unit than Texas. Texas got pushed around and going into this game, I thought it was going to be a strength for Texas. I really was like, that's good on good. Florida's offensive line and Texas defensive line, and it just didn't bear itself out. So like an F feels too harsh because there were some flash plays, but we came into the year thinking that these edges were going to be the best unit of the country. And over the last 3-4 games, the Texas interior defensive line has been really good, and that went into the game plan that was ineffective on the first drive because Texas played soft because they thought the line was going to hold up against Florida, and they just didn't. So like when you think about comparing it to the game plan and the expectation, like that's a failure in my book.
No, I think that's completely fair. I do think the interior played better than the edges. Like you said, Gerald, the edges have been probably the biggest disappointment of the year because the expectations. Obviously, they haven't been the worst group, but because of the expectations coming to the year, I think they've been a really big failure. Let's go over to the linebackers. I don't know if I can be much more. You know what? F plus as well. I'll give them an F plus because I thought they played a little bit better in the second half, but they really struggled with shedding blocks on the second level. Really struggled. When Florida's offensive line got their hands on our linebackers, they won that matchup almost every time, especially with Leon Lafau. I thought Anthony Hill played a better game in the second half. He was flying around a little bit more, but first half especially, we got dominated on the first and second levels of this defense. And I can't put a lot, when we get into the secondary, I can't put a lot on them. Just consistently make tackles versus a guy like Jaden Ball. You're not going to win those matchups. So the linebackers get an F plus from me.
Yeah, I'm going to be consistent here again, too, like you were. I'm going to go with a D. Like you said, I thought they played better in the second half, especially Anthony Hill, and they finally basically said to Anthony Smith, you're our starter in the second half. Man, the first half was bad, though. You talk about not being able to shed blocks. I thought they were missing their gaps multiple times. I thought they over pursued. There was times where, as a linebacker, you have to flow over the top and, especially on those zone concepts, but they just were not doing so. They really exposed some of our limited athleticism in the linebacker off-ball linebacker room. So, yeah, I'll give them a D.
Yeah, it's a D- for me. I think because one of the 2+ plays the defense made on the day was at the linebacker position. Ty Anthony Smith with that the punch the ball out tackle that kind of flipped things and really stopped this game from snowballing even more. Because if that doesn't happen, this gets out of hand even earlier than it did. So like by the virtue of him playing, like Ty Anthony Smith really playing well. And Anthony Hill did come on quite a bit late at the end. He was very aggressive. So it's a D for me. But I think, Leongo Lafau is somebody who it's so frustrating for me to watch him because you can see the flashes of him being like the physical trendsetter for the linebacker unit. He's the guy who's going to get in there and stick his nose in there. And then there are games where he just kind of almost like where is he at in some of those moments. And I think that's why we saw Ty Anthony Smith getting some more run. So I think it's a D for me. It wasn't a great performance.
No, it might have been like defensive line linebacker combination. Probably the worst of the Sark era, honestly. I can't think of another game where it was that bad. It was pretty bad today.
That first year, I think we're mind holding that first year quite a bit because of how good, how much progress they made in years 2, 3, and 4. But people wanted to fire Pete Kwiatkowski after that first year. I'm old enough to remember that.
No, that's true. Let's say after the first year, I don't think like the past 3 years, there's nothing even close to this performance from the front seven. Back four, when we get to them, it's called Washington, and Michael Penix went absolutely nuclear in that game. But it wasn't that bad today. I actually think I'm going to give them the highest grade of the defense. I'm going to give them a C-. Other than a couple plays on a guy that is a stud and going to be an NFL player in Dallas Wilson. He'll probably be a first, second round pick when he decides to come out. If Billy Napier gets fired, Texas, you better be ringing that phone again because that's the type of player that guy is. I thought everyone else played pretty well, but when he was lined up 101, he ate. Like he had 2 touchdowns, I believe pretty close to 100 yards receiving, if not over. So I'll give him a C-.
Are we including safeties in this too?
Yeah, everyone.
You're more generous than I am.
I know.
Dallas Wilson's a true freshman playing his first game. He sunned every player on our football team. Sunned him. Michael Taff was carrying this dude's leg, and he was getting dragged in the end zone. That's a senior. I give him an F. I think it was terrible. DJ Lagway has thrown, how many interceptions versus LSU? 6?
He threw 5.
Or 5? I mean, he threw 1 to Michael Taff, and that was a lollipop. I thought they were bad. Straight up. Grayson Littleton looked like a freshman. No Manny Muhammad, so I'll give him a little bit of, maybe I'll go up to like an F+ because there is no Manny. But Jalen Gilbo, we talked about in the live stream, like so light in run support, and he's just not physical at the line of scrimmage. He's, in my opinion, best set as an inside corner or somewhere in the slot or nickel. I thought Michael Taft probably had one of his weaker performances of the year. I didn't think he was outstanding. Jelani McDonald had a couple bad plays. I'm putting it in the context of just how bad this passing attack has been for Florida. And in this game, it looked like Florida looked like a functional offense. Like if we only had this game to watch of Florida, we'd say, oh, that's a top 25 team in the country that just beat Texas. No, they're 1-3. And DJ Lagway has been horrible this year, and he looked like a functional starting caliber quarterback. So I give the unit an F. This is the unit that I am really disappointed in.
Going into this game, the previous 2 games that Florida played, DJ Lagway was worth -3 and -6 predicted points added with this play. And Texas allowed this man to go for 302 touchdowns. I'm failing the secondary. The lasting image of this game for me is looking at the back of Jalen Gilbo's jersey as he's 3 yards behind his man because Texas sold out on the blitz and went man-to-man coverage. Like that's the lasting image of this secondary for me in this game. It's burned into my memory. That's going to be a core trauma for Texas football for me because that was kind of emblematic of just how much half a step to a step slower the secondary looked against this Florida this Florida receiving unit. They were just not able to make the plays. And I'm not even gonna fault them for like their inability to make open field tackles and run support, because that's a losing proposition. When your secondary, when your corners and safeties are one-on-one with any running back in the open field, that's the whole point of playing offense, right? Is to try to get running backs in one-on-ones with quarterbacks and safeties. So like that's not anything I'm gonna fault them for. But ultimately, like when you think about how bad this Florida passing game has been versus how good they looked against Texas, it's an F.
I think that's fair. You know what? I'll drop mine down to a D plus, but I gotta be positive somewhere. I gotta give someone a D. You know, I can't go F plus for everyone. But yeah, so let's move on to the coaches. It's gonna be interesting because I think Sark did call a good game, but I'm gonna put blame on him for not fixing the offensive line when he clearly has seen it every day. So I'm baking that in this cake as well, because you knew what this was probably going to be going into the year and you did nothing about it. So I'm going to bake that in as well. I'm going to give him a D plus. I do think if you're just talking about the game plan, I liked it. But again, you get to watch this team every single day. You recruit each and every one of these players, and this is what you have put out at the offensive line position. We'll talk about Kyle Flood as well. We'll actually say him as a grade as well. But just for Steve Sarkisian, I'm going to go D plus.
I'll be a little bit nicer because I felt like they made adjustments. It just happened to be there was nothing they could have really done. They just don't have the personnel. So I'll give them a C plus. Again, I thought the play calling was pretty sharp all day. There were so many chances to make plays. The trick play, the amount of times that Arch got hit, there was guys running wide open downfield. So it's hard to really put a lot of the blame on Sarkisian on this one. I think the one thing I'll say is he kind of abandoned the run in the first half a little too early, which – I kind of can't blame the guy, because he kind of had to, but I do think there were some ways that he could have gotten some easy things as part of the run game just to make it a little bit easier for Arch. So for Steve Sarkisian as a play caller, I'll give him a C plus.
Yeah, I think for me, Sark probably gets a C or a C plus. I think this was probably one of the more consistent games that I think Sark has called. And I think this is one of those moments where even we saw some more designed runs for Arch, things that we've been kind of asking and hoping for. I thought Sark rolled a lot of that in. He was in his bag and he had to go deep in his bag in a lot of spots. But ultimately, I don't think Sark called the bad game. There were chances for this team to make plays. Arch held onto the ball too long for a couple of them. Arch got hit on a couple of them. So that even I think like the one that really is grating on me is Texas called this like middle tight end screen that I thought was a really well designed play. And then I watched DJ Campbell watch his man blow up the tight end, right? Like that was a good play call, but Texas didn't get the execution. Oh, was it Cole Hudson?
I think it was.
It was one of those two. One of the usual suspects, we'll say. But like, I don't think Sark called a bad game because again, Texas was slinging the ball. They went hurry up late, and things picked up for them. So like, I'm honestly not too upset with Sark in this game. It's one of the better games. There have been games where Sark's play calling has cost Texas, but this was not one of them.
Yeah, and I went heavy baked on like not getting the personnel you needed to because I think that's pretty clear at this point. He didn't. Kyle Flood F. Like, what have these guys that have been sitting learned? I don't know. Has DJ Campbell from the first time he actually started at Texas to now, has he gotten any better?
Yes, but not enough.
Not a lot. Yeah, not a lot. Like we might be talking a guy jumping from a C player to a C plus, B minus. But
I think he'll get drafted. He'll get drafted just because he has the Longhorn name and measurables. Yeah, for sure. But no,
but
in terms
as a
of
player, no.
Not with the amount of potential he hasn't taken the big step. Like Kelvin Banks had I think, wasn't DJ Campbell a higher rated player than Banks?
He was the highest rated interior offensive lineman in the past decade.
Yeah. So it's been, I hate to say disappointing because he's been on Texas. He's been a starter for Texas for multiple years, but in terms of what our high expectations are for him, yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
And then Connor Stroh's been sitting for 2 years. This is third year at Texas. It might even be fourth. I think it's his third though. And has not looked good. Cole Hudson, I expected a lot more of, has not looked good. It's really just the tackles. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Neto? He's just completely disappeared.
4 years.
Yeah. So I give him an F. These guys haven't progressed, and we've seen this in the game now where it's starting to, really, 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 really hamper this offense. So I give him an F.
I'm going an F too. If you're starting a true freshman at left guard, something's wrong. Not in today's college football. If you're starting a true freshman at guard, Nick Brooks, this is what I'm talking about, something's not right with your unit. When you have 3, maybe 4 weak spots in your offensive line, it's not good. It's not good enough. This is a team in Texas that has been built on winning the line of scrimmage under Steve Sarkisian, and this is a good exposing of this unit. So nope, it's an F for me. F minus infinity.
Yeah, I have nothing to add other than the fact that Nick Brooks is not just a freshman, but he's a freshman who's playing out of position, right? You have a freshman tackle playing guard. That's how bad it was, right? Like that. Kyle Flood is better than this, or at least we think he's better than this. I don't know what the malfunction is. I don't know what's going on. Texas has the resources to get these guys, and there's obviously the Texas Tech of it all and all of those things, but ultimately, you should not have to trot this group out there, even if it's just going in the portal to get somebody who's actually played a down of football before, just having somebody who's got those reps in the trenches, because I'm not going to fault freshmen for going into the swamp and having a couple of false starts. But you should not be in Texas out of position where you have to start a freshman offensive lineman in the swamp, unless it's a guy like Kelvin Banks who you have to start because you have to start them, right? That's inexcusable.
Yeah, and to Matthew's point, why is it Nick Brooks who has to be the guy that's thrown into that situation? We have Connor Stroh 3 years in the program, Nate Kibble 2 years in the program, Neto 4 years in the program. So why is it this backup left tackle who is a true freshman, who is a developmental piece at that is the guy that is your best available option? I think that is a huge problem that they have to address long term, because having a freshman at Nick Brooks, who I think is very talented, be the guy that is the best option at left guard is, in my opinion, completely inexcusable.
Yeah, I said it on social media. This was a referendum on Kyle Flood. This game was a referendum on Kyle Flood. Period.
When the ball snapped too, Brandon Baker's probably our second best offensive lineman. When we're just dropping back and everything's clean, he's probably the second best offensive lineman. His issue is pre-snap, which fine. You're a freshman. I'll live with that. Fine. 1 or 2 penalties, fine. But my God, post snap, why is the interior, especially left guard, like you said, Josh, and the other during the live show? I mean, he's getting treated like a New York turnstile. That's what it was. That's all it was. A turnstile would have put up more of an effort. It's literally a sidestep, bull rush, and it's over. The play's over. So
I just got to swipe the card on the turnstile.
Yeah. That's what we should do. Just line up 5 of those and have them swipe the card.
The worst pressure for a quarterback is up the middle, and yet Arch had pressure on almost every single snap up the middle from that left side, and he was still making plays. So that's, I give credit to him for that.
Okay, so let's go with special teams coordinator. Listen, so we did really good job with Bomeister, but are we going to give him a lot of credit for that? Because Bomeister came over from Utah, and he was an all Big 12 guy there. And his Gunners could not stop the football twice from good punts of going to the end zone, which in this type of game could have changed the momentum. Really, if you down them at the 1, hell, something goes wrong, you get a safety. A hold, something goes wrong, that's a safety. So I'm going to give Jeff Banks
and the blocked punt.
Yes, and also this. I forget, he's the tight end coach. Yeah, it's an F for me. He gets an F. That's what this year he's been the worst coach.
He's definitely not been a bright spot, that's for sure. Bomeister, I thought he had some nice kicks. I do think the Gunners let him down. We didn't really get to see too much from the field goal unit today, so we can't really judge that one. But yeah, I mean, the unit has taken a huge step back from years past. I mean, man, our special teams was actually a strength on our team. We were getting after it. We had multiple blocked punts. We had big returns. It's just not where it used to be. That we don't have the explosive pieces. I think we're too young out there. I don't think we have enough experience. And some of the packages they're throwing out, we also had a play where, or a punt where one of the guys ran into our returner. How does that happen? I mean, this is it's inexcusable stuff there. So yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I'll go D, because I think Bomeister had a couple nice punts.
F, fail him, get him out. I and this is gonna sound harsh, but part of Jeff Banks' appeal as a staff member was also his abilities as a recruiter, and that's not necessarily as required nowadays. So if he's not a plus special teams coordinator and he's not a plus tight end coach, which are 2 positions that Texas has flat out been bad at this year, I don't know why you're paying him as much as you're paying him. That to me is questionable. Texas struggled struggled to down punts at the one. Like Ryan Niblett watched a ball bounce in front of his face that he could have stopped. He was standing on the one and just let that I almost cussed, let that thing bounce right past him. Right. Like again, the one that was bouncing into the end zone and the Gunners weren't down there. Like I'm a little lighter on that because it's hard to do that and acrobatics of it all. But like Ryan Niblett letting that thing bounce into him, Texas players running into their own return man, inexcusable, the blocked punt, like just bad all around.
Hey, if Jeff Banks does get fired, we'll always have Pole Assassin. He gave us that at least. Sorry, I had to do it because earn your paycheck, man. You're getting paid. I think he's getting paid $1 million a year as a tight end special teams coach. So it's like, dude, what are you doing with that money? Let's go defensive corner. Hey, he is the best coach on this team, period. He is the best coach on this football team, Pete Kwiatkowski. I trust him. He did make a lot of adjustments. The team did get better in the second half. I'm going to give him a C-. I thought the initial game plan, but again, he trusted what he thought he saw, which is, hey, the defensive tackles will be able to handle these guys. The edges will be able to set the edge, and we're going to play soft and make DJ Lagway go down the field. I don't know if I would have done anything different with the game plan, so I'm just going to go C-. I think he did a decent job here.
Yeah, I'll give him a C. You can't really blame him for guys underperforming. I thought he put them in good enough positions, and I like the fact that he wasn't stubborn. When he noticed that DJ Lagway in this run game is going, he made adjustments. And, unfortunately, I kind of blame him a little bit because he did have to throw a ton of young guys out there, which, again, is that his fault or is that the fault of the staff as a total for not bringing in more experience? But, Cade Phillips was starting out there. Grayson Littleton as a freshman is your starting nickel. You're starting Anthony Smith, the true sophomore. And I also don't – this is something that I don't know if it's really a bad thing that they do, but they rotate a lot of people in. And in a game like this, I would have just liked to have seen them, stick with their starters for most of the game. But it felt like there was times where I'm like, okay, Xavier Filsame's out there. It's a crucial third down. I would have liked to see Michael Taff or something. But yeah, so I'll give him a C.
Yeah, I think I gave Sark a C, and I think that's where I feel about Kyle Flood, or not Kyle Flood. I definitely feel about Kyle Flood, about Pete Kwiatkowski, because he did the right thing with his initial game plan. I don't think anybody else in the country would have watched Florida for the past 4 games and done anything differently, right? Especially with what we thought Texas had on the defensive line and in the linebackers. We said it in our pregame show. I said it everywhere I could. Like I would play in a way that forces DJ Lagway to be a quarterback. And the defensive interior specifically let him down because that was very clearly with the way that the secondary was playing what he was coming out to do. So I think it's a C, and he did adjust, right? He did figure out what was going on. The defense made some crucial stops in the second half that the offense didn't necessarily capitalize on, right? The defense forced a couple of turnovers. The offense scored on one, gave the ball right back on the other. So like, I'm not upset with what Pete Kwiatkowski brought to the table because a lot of it was on execution. Again, I thought it was the right decision. I keep coming back to that Jalen Gilbo blowing that man coverage. It was the right decision to blitz DJ Lagway and go one-on-one. But the guy on the field did not get the job done. So I think a C feels fair for Pete Kwiatkowski.
Yeah, I actually think the game plan overall from everyone was good. I think, honestly, what I've come to terms with slowly over this past, 2 hours since the game ended is I think we lost this game before we stepped on the field because we didn't have the players to execute the scheme. And I think we lost this game in the offseason because we didn't see the weaknesses that we had and fill those guys because I think the game plan was solid on both sides of football.
Yeah.
I think it's fair.
That's a very fair point right there.
So unfortunately, guys, we do fall to 3-2 heading into Red River. Let's do this real quick. We'll go quickly. Do you see any hope for Texas? What is your record prediction the rest of the year? I see a little bit of hope. I'm going to stick with 8-4.
Yeah, I think there's hope. You're 3-2, so that's best case scenario. You're 10-2. I think you're probably losing to Georgia, and you're probably going to drop at least one more. So yeah, I do think 8-4 is very realistic right now. I think Texas will clean up some of the defensive issues. I think they really underperformed today, and I think once they get Manny Muhammad back, that'll clean some things up right there. Offensive line has to get moved around. They got to make some adjustments there. You can't have Nick Brooks or Stroh starting no more. So I'm intrigued to see what they do in the upcoming week. They have a huge test against Oklahoma. I think Florida was the exposing. Florida was opening the eyes. I think Oklahoma will tell us everything we need to know about this season. If we have a similar game to Florida, 7-5 is looking pretty good.
I think part of my hope is that everybody is kind of bad this year. Like I think everybody sucks. I think part of what keeps my hope somewhat alive is that I don't think there's actually a really good, maybe there's one or two good teams, but I think not very many of them. So I think 8-4 feels fair because again, I think there's I mean, whether it's A&M, because A&M matches up, I think, well with what Texas doesn't do well. I think OU matches up well with what Texas doesn't do well. I think Georgia matches up well with what Texas doesn't do well. So, I think that's a big part of what we're going to watch. But ultimately, I think it's hard to predict what happens in Dallas at the Red River just because that's such a weird game. A&M at home is always such a weird game. So, I do think that 8-4 is still, I think 9-3 is still in the realm of possibility. I think it's a very slim chance, but ultimately I think 8-4 is probably the best we're going to see.
I agree. Again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. That was the Texas versus Florida grades. Again, check us out every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern time and Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. I don't know what the hell just happened there. Thank you guys for joining us. And as always,
Oh gosh.